Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
For the next half hour, we are joined, of course, by the anti-corporate corruption crusader, Ralph Nader. Sometime I really ought to go through his bio. I know everybody knows who Ralph Nader is, but some people may not know the full or even part of the history of this interesting individual. He is running for president as an independent, and I wanted to get him on today to talk about his campaign and why he is running and why it's important. Obviously, more than ever now, people are listening to his message. But I wanted people to get a chance to really hear from Ralph Nader today and support his campaign, because the military-industrial complex completely controls the Republican and Democratic parties now. That is more clear today than ever. And we now even have Ron Paul coming out. They had a great press conference a few weeks ago together. Of course, Cynthia McKinney, Congressman Ron Paul, Ralph Nader, and others saying they've got to, everybody's just got to support outside voices, because those are the true voices of the American people. On every issue, the Congress does what is unpopular and unconstitutional. Same with the president. Just right down the line, never before has it been so obvious with Congress with a 9% approval rating. So I want to go over that today, and I've got a few questions of my own for Ralph Nader. And we're only 40-something days out from the election, ladies and gentlemen. Ralph Nader, thanks for spending time with us today.
A pleasure, Alex.
You've got the floor. Instead of me throwing questions out, what do you think is most important for the listeners to be informed about? And not just informed, how do they take action to try to continue to expand a movement to resist what is clearly corporate fascism looting the entire economy now in the final phase of just completely imploding the nation?
Well, they'll vote for Nader Gonzalez, to put it in a nutshell. We're the only candidacy, and we're number 3 now with 6, 7, 8% in the polls on 45 state ballots. We're the only candidacy that predicted this Wall Street implosion, the crooks on Wall Street. For 20 years, I've been warning about this, even by naming the companies, the banks, Citibank and Merrill Lynch and AIG and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And I testified and wrote and articles and had press conferences. Nobody listened. Nobody listened because corporations are running our government, and our government officials are on leave from Wall Street and other corporate executive positions to run the Department of Treasury, Department of Defense, Department of Agriculture, Interior, and many other departments. And we don't have a government that represents us, that stands for the working stiff in this country, that stands for the people who do all the hard work, that stands for the people who pay all the bills, the consumers, the taxpayers. And that's why on our website, we have good information on what to do with this Wall Street meltdown. I mean, it could have been prevented with comprehensive regulation. Instead, Clinton and his banking buddy, Robert Rubin, rammed through Congress in 1999 with both party support, the financial deregulation. In other words, they took the federal cop off the Wall Street crime beat. And then the companies were off to the races using other people's money, these executives, pension monies for workers and mutual funds and small savers and people who have a few shares in these so-called blue ribbon companies, and they drove them into the ground. And then before the crash occurred, they made sure that these bosses got huge executive compensation packages. And so when they quit or were pushed out of places like Citibank and Merrill Lynch and AIG and so on, they took away 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million bucks. And what we're saying is, now that Wall Street has melted down and drained and looted trillions of dollars of worker money, pension money, small investors. What we have to do is have the following quick sequence. No bailouts without taxpayer equity. That is, if the taxpayer in Washington is going to bail out these crooks, these corporations, and absorb the assets and try to resell them, if they come back to profit, if these companies come back to profit, the taxpayer gets made whole and gets part of the profit.
A dividend.
Yeah, exactly. That's what happened with the Chrysler bailout in 1979. The Treasury Department under Jimmy Carter insisted in return for this, what now looks like a quaint $1.5 billion loan guarantee to Chrysler, the taxpayer would have stock warrants, and they got stock warrants, and when Chrysler turned around and made money, the stock warrants were sold by the U.S. Treasury, and the taxpayer had $400 million in profit.
Well, Mr. Nader, I want to get into your plan to fix this, and I think you've got a great plan.
Here it is.
Sensible, but...
Here it is, very quickly.
Well, I mean, let's get into that, but first, let me just throw this out. What about criminal charges? What about punishing people, or they're going to continue to do this? This is only intensifying the orgy of looting. There's no discussion of indictments, no discussion of investigations.
Just bailouts.
And we also see them changing the bankruptcy laws and changing laws so they could loot pensions in the last 6 years. So we see premeditated preparation for this planned theft. I mean, can you speak to that and then give us your plan to fix it?
You're absolutely right. There's no talk in Washington, which is in a flurry trying to bail out these crooks, of prosecution and conviction. In fact, these guys got off with huge golden parachutes, and they're probably in the Bahamas or in Hawaii sunning themselves. It is amazing, isn't it, that this was a corporate crime, fraud, and abuse spectacular in Wall Street with trillions of dollars, and there's no talk of law and order prosecution, conviction, and imprisonment of these crooks. And, of course, you put a lot of corporate crooks in prison, and prison reform will come because they can't stand the quality of the food. So you're right. Right at the top should be that. That's what deterrence is. That's what creative punishment is all about. That's what the people of America expect. They expect that when guys at the top are crooks and they lie, steal, and deceive people, that they have to pay the time. They have to do the time. They have to be prosecuted. So I urge your listeners just to contact your members of Congress now. We're having hearings and say, hey, what about the corporate crime enforcement component of this? But no bailouts without taxpayer equity, without cracking down on the corporate crooks, without ending any golden parachutes, without requiring you've got to require disgorgement. They got to pay back their ill-gotten gains. You got to give shareholders control over the companies that they own. You know, shareholders could have stopped this. They never would have allowed these obscene pay packages and this reckless speculation with their money. And finally, we need two ways to reduce the speculation. One is to make the speculators use more of their own money. That's called margin accounts. Now they can borrow $1 and speculate on $1. But what if they had to put 50 cents of their own money in the buck? They'd be more careful.
Well, shouldn't we just ban naked shorting? I mean, they don't put any money up. But
that can be banned. But I'm just talking about your run-of-the-mill speculation with pension money, for example. And finally, and you'll like this one, you go into a store. Your listeners go into a store in most of the states where you're heard, and they have to pay sales tax when they buy clothing, appliances, some states even food, medicine. But today, someone on Wall Street can buy $100 million of Exxon derivatives or Pfizer derivatives or GM derivatives and not pay a dime. So it's unfair. The speculators pay no sales tax. The working stiffs, the workers, pay sales tax on necessities. The speculators pay no sales tax on speculation. So Nader Gonzalez on votenader.org, you can see it, are demanding a securities derivative speculation tax, which if it's less than 1% on the $500 trillion of transactions this year, $1 trillion, it would raise a lot of money, and the federal income tax on more workers can be significantly reduced in return. So tax the speculators before you tax honest labor. And that's why we think our website is the most honest presidential website ever. And we list very clearly on the issues page of votenader.org all the changes, most of them supported by a majority of the American people, that are on our table, Nader Gonzalez, and are off the table, McCain and Obama.
Well, I would challenge listeners who think they may know Ralph Nader just from what they've seen on corporate media. Go to the website, watch 30-minute speeches, hour-long speeches. They're dynamic, but it's also chock full of facts and information from somebody who is informed and spends many hours a day studying. This guy's telling you the truth right down the line. It's so refreshing. And also you can see the press conference and the speeches with you and Ron Paul and Cynthia McKinney and action plans. And, you know, regardless of where the campaign goes, people should support it, donate to it, get involved, because people need to know